All right, so right back into another video here. Just wanted to show you some more from the initialization. It's really interesting that you can set up, I gotta actually go back here and set my, for my flight pan, set my actual departure runway. And so it's gonna be 27 left. And now when I accept that part of the initialization, I can go to runway and it's looking for me to put in some performance data. This screen is great. It shows outside air temperature today was almost 85 degrees, so it gives you your density altitude of 2562. Now our field here is about 980 feet, so it's quite a bit different when it's 85 degrees outside. Shows you how much it changes. But it also gives you the takeoff distance over the ground, which in this case, I'm gonna need 1094. It's based on our weight and all the different calculations that it has. It also gives you over a 50-foot obstacle, which is another almost 800 feet, which is crazy. And gives you the climb gradient, which 822 feet per nautical mile, which could come in handy if you had an ODP that you had to maintain a certain gradient. So now I can come in here and put that performance data in here. So if it's a day where it does matter, it's great to have that on the ready. And now all that initialization is complete. All right, so I'm going to make that map full screen and make it useful during my taxi, finish up some of my checklist items, and you can see that 3D kind of drone view. Super great for situational awareness. And I know I still don't have audio on this trip. The cable I ordered didn't work, so I got a different one. So the next video I do will 1000% have cockpit audio because it's annoying to have to do these voiceovers. And I just think it's better when I'm talking through when I'm actually doing it. So yeah, but I did pull a couple little audio clips from live ATC, but sometimes you just don't get both transmissions, as you'll see coming up here. But
98 Tower, Cirrus 524 Charlie, holding short of 27 left, we are IFR.
Cirrus 524 Charlie, Pontiac Tower, hold short, only 27 left.
Hold short, 27 left, 524 Charlie.
And I did file IFR for this flight, even though it's clearing 1 million. If I'm going pretty far distance, I like to do it regardless. I did file to a different airport because last time I got flight following to this airport, for some reason they couldn't find it. I don't know if I read the identifier wrong in midair, so I'm not 100% sure, but just to avoid that, I decided to file to an airport with an approach that was about 10 minutes away because I knew I was going to cancel in the air anyway, so it was just a point to pick in space that was pretty close.
Cirrus 4 Charlie, traffic on the road to Cessna, a right turn out to the east, fly runway heading, runway 27 left, just to take off.
And you can see it picked up the tower that time, but didn't pick up me. Again, that's coming from live ATC. No shade on them, it's just limitations of whatever transmitter is picking up stuff here. So just taking on taking off on runway 27 left out of Pontiac. And I've got to change that zoom on that camera. It kind of pans around on its own there. One thing I'm doing differently now, and again, video is not instruction by any, I'm just sharing my experiences here. But one thing I used to always do in my older G2 was I'd go flaps up after I reached 90 knots. But the new instructor at Cirrus, he kind of gave me a good tip to where I now basically don't go flaps up until I'm done with usable runway, which generally is about 200 feet above the ground. And this plane has a great feature. It's called a gaggle. It's a GPS above ground level. It's just to the lower right of the HSI. And it's really great to show you how far you are above the ground.
Cirrus 4 Charlie, traffic off your right wings, Cessna towards the east, contact Detroit departure.
So that's really great, especially when it comes to caps, because it's usually 600 feet when that's available. And when I reach that altitude, you see me reach up and I'm basically saying caps is available, and that's when I go flaps up. But it's a really great situational that I end up using a ton, way more than I would have thought of.
524 Charlie, Detroit departure, radar contact, turn right, direct destination.
Right direct destination, 524 Charlie.
So yeah, I think I'm high enough in the air now that the receiver picked me up. I'm going to the FMS, basically saying direct enter. It updates my magenta line. Don't just fly back to the original one. Update, be a pro pilot. It's It's my little tip for you. Again, not instruction at all, just my experience. So just turning, and at this point, it's the autopilot's doing all the work, and I'm just monitoring my engine leaning and kind of doing my checklist to during the climb. Pretty straightforward and simple. All right, so we've leveled off into the climb, and I wanted to show a little more deep dive into some of the other FMS stuff. This is fantastic. Again, a lot of this stuff I could get on my iPad, but I'm trying to use the system as is. So you can click your destination. In this case, it's an airport called Boyne Falls. Go to waypoint info, and pretty much all the information you ever need is right there. You can load comms either into the active or standby, either one. You can pull up the weather. It's the METAR decoded. You can see when it was last posted. That was 14:53 Zulu. I look at my watch and it's about 1400. And it's got all the information that you would need. At the very top is the raw data. So, you know, make sure you still understand that. Come back in. I can pull up charts. In this case, I'll just put up the airport diagram there, or just the general airport chart. I'm trying to, again, get used to these instead of using it on my iPad. And you can come back down. Well, got out of there, go back to the destination and waypoint info, go back to procedures, and you can see, let's pull up the RNAV 17. It's an LNAV plus V. Go preview, show that chart. So at this point, I could start briefing. If we were actually doing an instrument approach, I can bring that up and start briefing that chart up, which is fantastic. And again, it's all on the iPad, but trying to get away from that, or utilizing the tools that are on here. And I'm finding it, the workflow very, very nice. Cancel out of that. Just get general info about it, bearing, distance, elevation at the field, runway information, distance, services, things like that. It's a great tool that you can start prepping, doing your flight planning as you're flying along. Another great feature or workflow that the system allows, or part of the information that's in there, is looking at restricted areas. I knew on this path in my flight plan that I was going to be clipping a little bit of a restricted area. Probably should have planned around it, but I wanted to show you this. So you can zoom in on those areas and get specific information about that. And when that becomes useful is working with ATC. So I was talking to Minneapolis Center, and rather than just saying, hey, is the restricted area ahead active or not? Because a lot of that is, sometimes it's by NOTAM. I can actually hover over it, see the name, and specifically say, hey, is restricted, 4021B active, versus that way he doesn't have to look up, oh, let me see which one he's going to clip. Is it active? It helps him and me to kind of cut down on the communication. So it's a great little feature as you're flying along and kind of doing some planning. So at this point, I had canceled my IFR. I'm kind of descending down, and what's really great, I had already flown to this airport a few days ago to drop my dad off, and I'm going back to pick him up right now. One thing that's super nice is the airport puts up these big crosshairs on the map, so you get an idea of kind of where you need to point the plane in space versus, visually looking out on a day like today that's super hazy. If you've never been there before, it's, figuring out exactly where you need to be in space can be a challenge. So you'll see on the map here that cyan line that's coming out of my nose. I'm basically pointing that to a dotted line that's coming directly south of the airport. So I'm basically setting me up on a midfield downwind. On a small airport like this that doesn't have a visual approach, I would never do a straight in. I mean, there's sometimes I do. I know it's kind of frowned upon, but if there's no traffic in the area and there's an approach, a lot of times I will do a straight in. But in this case, because it's a short-ish field and I wanted to set up on a typical pattern and fly it normally so I can get my speeds under control and be all set. So that line that comes out of your nose and points on the map, it's a great way to kind of look in the cockpit and say, okay, I'm pointed at the airport right now. Let's look outside and see what I've got going on. I generally will look at Google Maps and try to get an idea before I take off somewhere, so I kind of know what landmarks to look at. But this adds a nice little supplement in there to help you really situationally see where you're at in space. It's fantastic. So sped the video up there a little bit, and now I've got about I do have a crosswind here, and it's not so much a short field. It's like 3,000 feet, but it's only 50 feet wide, and it's kind of nestled in this little valley here. So all hand flying, there's no approach here or anything like that. And I've got a tailwind at this point, so I'm just gonna kind of keep my base turn coming around and make sure that I don't overshoot final. Again, there's gonna be, I think there was about an 8-knot crosswind on this one, and just kind of coming over these hills, it was a little bumpy, a little bit unstabilized. I mean, ish, not dangerous or anything like that. But you can see I'm kind of cheating in a little bit because I know that wind's going to push me north, and just trying to set myself up for a typical pattern. I'm flying it like a short field, where I'm kind of aiming before the threshold and really going to put it down, even though, again, it's 3,000 feet. It's not short, but this is one of the more narrow strips I've ever flown into. 50 feet wide is not super wide. And if it was a really gusty crosswind day, I might reconsider for sure. But this is what general aviation is all about. These airports are fantastic. This field was actually in fantastic shape. I mean, it was in really good condition. No FBO or fuel or anything like that, but great to get in and out and get a passenger. And that camera angle kind of makes it seem like I'm more off center line than I am. I promise I wasn't. You can see on the PFD, actually, it looks like I'm almost right of center. So yeah, a great little flight, a little 45-minute, maybe close to an hour flight north to go pick up my dad, and wanted to share some of that other FMS stuff. Promise on the next videos that I will have some audio. We'll do some more focus stuff. Try to build some structure on these videos to make them more enjoyable, do some in-depth. If you guys have any requests that you want to see out of the G3000, let me know. I'd love some ideas to show off. And again, not saying that I'm an expert at it by any stretch, but it's fun to share some of the stuff as I learn it as well. So yeah, stay tuned for the next one. Oh, you know what? I'm going to show some stuff from my Quebec trip. So I had every intention of doing a lot more filming on this trip to Quebec I just did from Southeast Michigan, and I didn't because it was a pretty challenging flight, and I thought it would be prudent to actually focus on flying versus making a video. But super fun. We had a lot of weather challenges, a lot of IFR, a lot of rain. But man, this system, the G3000, just made it a dream. I mean, they even put me on an arrival procedure at last minute, and it was so easy to load and just manage that whole process. It was great, absolutely great. One thing that was super crazy, which I had no idea about, was that the Montreal Center, or whoever I was talking to at the time, or I guess just Nav Canada, they can see a lot more on ADS-B than what we can in the States. And what I mean by that is that FMS bug for the altitude on there. Like, a lot of times I was on an arrival, and when they gave me the arrival, I said, oh, my next fix is going to be at 5,000 feet. I had bugged that in my FMS just in advance planning, and they got a warning on their screen that I had an altitude mismatch. So they can actually see through ADS-B what I have bugged for a future altitude in my FMS. And I had a little conversation with the guy. It was really interesting. But a bunch of French-speaking controllers up there, but they speak English to you, obviously. But really great. I've got another video on how to fly to Canada in my videos to Toronto, because I go back and forth there quite a bit. And it's a great process. I highly encourage people to do it. It's fun to learn the little bit of differences that they have out there. So didn't shoot much on there, but it was a great challenging flight, and we'll see you guys later.